Amna Al Qubaisi. Welcome to the Power and Destiny podcast with me, Akmal Salim. We've got so much to talk about. We've known each other for a few years now, and I've continued following your progress and following your journey. And it's been super exciting to see you doing so many awesome things. And I can't wait for this story to be out there to my audience, which is quite international. So many people may not actually know of you or of the level in terms of eliteness on a sport that you've reached. And so unpacking that today is going to be really interesting, all framed through power and destiny. So a bit different in terms of some of the other stuff you may have done, because today we're going to be talking about maybe the unknown, the unseen, the kind of coincidences that took place for you to be where you are. For people who don't know, Amna is the Middle Eastern, or I should say GCC's first Formula racing driver, and in some respect, maybe even just the first racing driver, female racing driver in the Arab world, who's currently racing in the Formula One Academy and is doing some incredible things in the sport of Formula One. So let's get straight into this. Now, my first question, maybe the most important question, is how fast did you drive to get to the studio?
I drove pretty quick because I was trying to avoid traffic. So yeah, pretty quick.
So obviously, Dubai and the Emirates traffic is horrible, right?
Always.
Yeah. So how frustrating does that get?
Oh yeah, it gets really annoying because I don't know why they slow down. There's no need to slow down. They just do it out of nowhere, and then it causes a lot of traffic and then sometimes incidents, and yeah. I see it's avoidable.
As a racing driver, what does it feel like driving on normal roads?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. I mean I do speed up, but I always, abide the law. I'm always following the rules.
We've got
Try
to say
to
that, by the way.
Yeah. So, but you're more cautious, like you wear your seatbelt all the time, you try to keep a distance between a certain vehicle, so you're more cautious.
And you drive obviously a lot, but how do you transition, obviously, when you're racing to how you're just maybe just driving on the normal road? Like, is it just like autopilot, or do you find yourself actually concentrating more because you're not racing? Like, how does that work? Like,
I mean, when you're racing, you're on a track where you have slick tires and you have to always focus on one same point all the time at the track, and down the road it's more like freestyle, you can go anywhere around and you don't have to focus on one specific spot. It's more based on feeling. So I look at it I'm driving down the road and I'm like, okay, this is like a racing line going into this corner. Oh, I'm trying to hold some speed. I don't need to slow down that much. So, yeah.
that corner before you get home, I bet you've nailed that corner because you know exactly where to go, right?
Yeah, I took, so many tries and I aced it. Now all the time is always the same turn.
Same turn.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And just for the world, because I know my audience is going to want to know this. What's the fastest speed that you've actually been in your racing car?
So it was a Formula 3 Asia car, down Yas Marina. I think I went down 230 to 40 kilometers and I didn't feel it. I just saw it on the camera, like, oh, it's 240. I'm like, oh, I didn't notice. I thought it was 100. It's not fast enough.
240 kilometers an hour. That's serious, man.
Yeah.
But let's dive into, though, how it came about racing. Obviously, this isn't a normal pathway for young Arab females generally, but your father was a racing driver. And so, as we're talking about power and destiny here, like, did you feel like this was your destiny, or did you feel, that when was that first moment you knew I'm going to be a racing driver?
Honestly, like I saw my dad racing and all, and when I was 9 years old, but it never really got to me like, oh, I want to be a part of that world. I was basically, focused on my studies. I wanted to be the first, female Emirati to graduate from Harvard. That
Okay.
was my mindset when I was young. But then my cousin beat me to it. So she graduated from Harvard as the first female Emirati. So I was a bit annoyed. No, I'm proud of
So you
her.
just decided to become a racing
I was
driver,
like,
you
you
know? I
know
was
what?
like,
I'll be a racing driver. No, I actually I was doing gymnastics, so it was really boring for me. There was a competition once a year, and it wasn't like something I was interested in anymore. But then I used to have my dad bring racing drivers and the team over to the house for dinner. Sometimes they spend the night in our house when there's a race weekend in the UAE. So I was really intrigued. Like they were always talking about racing. There was no other topic, just the car, the technical parts of the car, the mechanical parts of the car, the drivers, the tracks, and I'm like, they never shut up. They're always talking about this topic, even at the dinner table. So I went up to my dad and I was like, okay, I want to be a part of this world. Like I see them all excited and very passionately talking about it. So I really want to be a part of this world. And he took me karting when I was 14.
okay, so that's actually quite a late start.
Yeah,
Because
really late.
14 that's very late,
Yeah.
actually. So you've turned up at the track.
Yeah. So basically, in the beginning, we had my dad was just training me in rental karting, and I was fortunate enough to know that there was an academy established for young Emirati racing drivers, and they would pick out the top 20, top 15 best lap times in the racing track. So I was one of them who had the best lap times, and they called my dad and they told him, we have a girl. Is she related to you? Her name's Amna Al Qubaisi. Is she related to you somehow? She also has a really good lap time, and we want her in the academy. And my dad's like, yeah, yeah, that's my daughter. So that's how it all started, and they basically built me from the age of 14 till I was 17. That was their last year, and I was able to win a championship in their behalf.
Brilliant. That's wicked. And and as you're going through this training program, like did you know about Formula 1 at that time, or like did you have like a clear, you could say, pathway? Or was it just like, I'm just enjoying this and I'm just going to carry on going down and just seeing where it goes?
Yeah, I mean, Formula One was a dream, just like everybody else. I think for me, I was just like enjoying it. I wasn't really taking it serious. I was more so just having fun, going to Europe, taking some experience. If I had the sponsorship, okay. If I didn't, then it's not like gonna affect me in any other way. So I then had a sponsorship opportunity from Kaspersky, and it was also their first time to sponsor a woman in motorsport. So it was a huge deal, and they sponsored me in F4 Italian. So if it wasn't for them, I don't think I would reach that single seater dream of mine. So yeah, I raced in F4 in 2018 and 2019. And honestly, it was like a surreal feeling because I never expected or saw myself racing in F4 at 17,
Yeah,
at the age
absolutely.
of 17, like imagining I would be driving that car.
Yeah. And and so let's go into a little bit more deeper in terms of, so to you though, what does destiny actually mean? So like if somebody says to you, like, you were destined to be here, what's destiny to you as a concept?
I mean, I think for me, destiny is more so like something that was made for you, like I did gymnastics and it's not my destiny, basically. It wasn't made for me. I didn't really bond with it. It requires a lot of commitment and patience. I'm not patient. So racing,
Doesn't racing require commitment
it
and
does.
patience, right?
It does require commitment, yes, but a bit of both, like it's a bit of everything. It's not just, one, two, it's a bit of everything at the same time. Sometimes patience, like only like when it comes to like braking, throttle, you have to be a little patient with the throttle. And then in some corners, you shouldn't be a patient. You should be full flat out, it's a mix of everything. So that's what I like about racing. There's a mix of everything, and it's a very unpredictable sport.
Yeah.
You can qualify top 10 or top 5, and then in the race, you have an engine problem or someone took you out, or it's a very unpredictable sport.
But I think that's where the patience really comes in, right?
True. Yeah.
Because obviously, people who know me, they know I'm massively into motorsport, and I will plug a bit of my own. I was in the top 50 karting drivers in Saudi Arabia,
Oh, mashallah.
but there's not many. I think there's
Mm.
only 50 drivers. So so I think, but no, of karting even in Saudi's got more, and I do it a lot with one of my really close friends, and we travel kind of everywhere and do it. But when you realize the technical side of formula racing, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand or appreciate how technical this is. It's not just about driving or racing the car. It's the precision, the speed, precision, but also, and what I really want to dive into more is the fear factor.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned earlier, you went 240 kilometers an hour down the track. Like, how do you get over the fear, or how did you get over the fear, or are you just fearless?
I mean, in the beginning, like the first time I ever drove an F4 car, I was actually really scared. Like, I wouldn't even go full gas down the straights. I was 50% on the pedal. And they would, when I'd pit and they check the data, they're like, "You're not even full gas." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to get used to the car." So of course, like in the beginning, it was very new to me. I was uncomfortable. It's my first time driving a single-seater car. So there was a fear, and I overcame that fear. And it did take a while. It took a year for me to get over that fear. And then you realize you just want more speed, more, you know, more power, more downforce. You just start being, you get more and more greedy once you
Mm.
get
Yeah.
comfortable.
But how did you get over the fear? So like, was there like a moment where you're like on one of the tracks and you're like, right, you know what? I've got this now. You trust the car. See, again, the technical, we have to keep bringing the
Hmm.
technical part in, because you might start a practice session and you don't feel the balance of the car,
Hmm.
or that because it's a bit damp. And again, such fine margins at the level that you obviously race at, where a bit of moisture can create chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, once, like, they always tell you to go out and feel the track, try to feel if it's safe enough to go full gas, to use the brakes, to if you can use slick tires, wet tires. So that part, because I'm not very familiar with wet conditions, I'm used to dry conditions because of the UAE and the weather. So, and last year in F1 Academy, we basically raced in times when it was just really dry and really sunny. So wet conditions is not my favorite or something I'm very good at. So I still have that fear factor. Like last weekend in Zandvoort, I did not like the wet conditions, so it was like a disadvantage, but it was
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
I think for me, like getting over that fear the first time I got into an F4 car was the fact that I was doing simulator before
Yeah.
I went into the car to overcome that fear. So basically try to implement and replicate what I did on the sim on the car, and just trusting the car, trusting my mechanics. They were telling me, you can trust the car. Nothing's gonna happen. Everything's safe. And if something happens, you have like runoff in
Yeah.
case anything happens. So
Absolutely.
that's how I overcame it.
Yeah, and that's a good kind of point, because obviously more recently, because you're now experiencing, let's just say, wet conditions, you've got to overcome a different type of fear. So speed
Yeah.
is not even the fear, right? Now it's not about speed; it's about control
Yes.
and how
Yeah.
much power you have
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
able to control, and that, I think, is maybe what experience. Do you think experience is what gets you over the fear kind of factor?
Yeah. I think the more you're the more you drive in wet conditions, the more you realize, like, I know what I'm doing and I know how the car will react, or how the car will, like, how I can control it in these conditions. So for me, like, I'm not very familiar. It's like I maybe drove in the rain once or twice, and it was just like trying to not spin basically and try to carry as much speed as I can. And I was never really good at the wet. So yeah, when Zandvoort was maybe like my third time driving in wet conditions, and I did not like it. I
Mm,
did not enjoy it,
yeah,
and the whole time I was just trying to not spin,
yeah.
and I spun like twice. So especially in an F1 weekend, there's a lot of rubber, so it's like worse,
Yeah, yeah,
not something I'm used to.
yeah, yeah. But I'm sure after, I know now you're like analyzing your
Hmm.
the weekend, but I'm sure that once that settles, I think you're going to go back and look at that and be like, you know what, that was a really good experience,
Hmm.
like a really strong part of even your development in terms of what you're doing and what you're achieving. So again, the character, and this comes back down to again the kind of core of why we're here and talking about this, is that because there's so many young people, whether they're in sport or business or something, and creating resilience is a very difficult thing.
Hmm.
And people mostly shy away from putting themselves in an uncomfortable position. But you have number one a bit of no choice because you're in the sport and you don't know what the conditions are going to be, but you've got to have that mental resilience, right, to get through that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to mentally also be prepared. Um, Going into a condition, you need to accept it and not frown like, oh my God, it's raining and I don't like this and I don't want to drive, and you can't do anything. You just have to just accept it and go with it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about um your you had an accident, right?
Oh yeah.
You crashed, right? And that was, when was that? It was about
I, I think it was like 2021.
2021, right? So a few years ago. Now, obviously, you've spent years training, and and you may have had minor incidences, but this was a serious,
Hmm.
like, number one, how did you feel in that moment? And number two, then, like, how did you overcome that to then just get even better in the sport and achieve even more?
I mean, in that moment, it was just like um, a really bad word. I was like, oh shit. you know, I see a car and I can't really do much. The best I did was actually just I aimed for the tire rather than the crash box. Because I've seen before, like, drivers who go at the crash box, they lose their legs. So initially, my first instinct was to go for the tires. So after hitting the tire, that's basically like I just everything felt like it was in slow motion. And then I got out of the car and I was just in shock, and I felt like there was something really sharp. Like I feel sharp pain in my chest, and I feel like I needed to puke. I just sat on the side for a moment just to like breathe, because I feel like the seatbelt in the car really like was really tight. So the whole impact, I was with the tub the entire time, so it was really painful and felt like puking. So I just had to like sit down. They brought the ambulance and they were gonna take me on the what's it called, the thing?
Stretcher.
The stretcher, and I refused. I said no, I'm gonna go walk to the
Mm.
ambulance. I refused to sit on that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And they got really upset because they were like, oh, you could have broken your back. I was like, listen, if I did, I will let you know,
Yeah.
but I'm okay.
But, uh,
So during that moment I was just like, I just needed like a breather. I just needed to sit down and take everything in. After, I was just really upset and I was crying because my car was gone and I needed to get a new car, because basically they had to get rid of that car. It's not safe anymore to
yeah,
use on track.
yeah.
So that was the only time I was really upset. Other than that, I was just scared when I was behind someone the race after. So whenever I was really close behind the rear, I was too scared to be that close.
And how did you overcome that though? Like how long did it take to actually overcome that fear of maybe that happening again? Getting back into the stride, feeling really comfortable, confident again. Like, how long did that take?
I would say like for the whole F3 Asia season, um, I didn't really overcome it. It took me a really long time. I think after F3 Asia, I wasn't racing for a year. And then when I went into F1 Academy, it was basically like I forgot about it because I haven't been racing for a year. So I jump back in the car and like everything is brand new to me. I forgot what each button does on
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
car,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's like basically trying to relearn and then
yeah.
I forgot about
Yeah.
it.
So like a hard reset that kind of
Yeah.
actually helped, right?
Yeah, it does.
So is that, would you say that was the moment like where you were the lowest and then you kind of came back from that? Or has there been other times where you've just thought, right, you know what? Forget this. I don't want to be in this space. I don't want to be involved in motorsport anymore.
I mean, like there were moments I was like I don't want to be involved in motorsport because like being behind the scenes, you notice everything and you realize that you're at a disadvantage almost every race weekend, whether it's you or the car or anything that happens within the team. So sometimes I just want to like back out and not get involved anymore. Like motorsport is changing. It's not like how it was in karting where everyone has their own thing, everyone is friendly, and there wasn't much games being played. Now in single seater is much more expensive, much more serious, and there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. So there are times, but then I realize like I have to have fun at the end of the day. I shouldn't really think about like, oh, I need to prove myself or show everyone that I'm good enough just to please people on social media or anything. So I just realized, just have fun and enjoy it. It's not, you're racing for yourself, you're not racing for somebody.
Hmm. So let's go into that side. So if we park racing and go into some of the other stuff or the things that you enjoy. So um you've been doing some really interesting advertising stuff, obviously with different brands in UAE, especially. I remember I came to Dubai one of the times, and I pulled up to the petrol station, and you had done a campaign with ADNOC, and I think I messaged you saying
Yeah.
I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
So how are you finding that, and is that a really interesting kind of break as you just start doing these different things and experiencing a different part of business, right? Because this is now you're negotiating deals
Mhm.
with people, and so how's that for you at the moment? How does that?
I mean, like it's a really good um part involved in. I mean, it's like a side thing being involved with brands, doing collaborations and stuff. But honestly, most of that money goes to my racing. It doesn't really go to anything that I do. Maybe a small percentage is like for me, and then the rest goes for my racing. So that's why I basically do it. I use these as, a little side hustle to fund my
Yeah.
racing and like the logistic parts and everything. So that's why I do it. Usually I don't enjoy doing them. I'm like,
Okay.
no, it's too cringe. I don't
Mm.
like it. I don't like the way I look. I don't like this.
Mm.
But then at the end of the day, I'm like, listen, it's gonna help you, get into a race weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll do it for that.
So what was the most cringe one then? You brought
They're
it up.
so cringe. Every time like there is an interview or campaign that is out, I never watch it. I never watch it. I
So none of
refuse.
them.
None of them. I never watch it.
Wow, like more recently, someone else, one of my friends, he told me about a new paddle thing that you did recently as a collaboration.
Oh yeah.
So,
So I never look at them by the
okay,
way.
okay, fine. And explain that though, because I think people might be confused here because they're like, wait a second, you've got to do this to fund doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
and that doesn't actually register a lot in people's minds because motorsport is very different, right? So you've got to you still have to put in money, right, to be able to compete.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why we have sponsors. I mean, when you're in the feeder series from Formula 3 to Formula 2, you fund everything. You pay for your racing, for your engineer, for your mechanic, for logistics, hotels, everything you pay with your own money. That's why, they consider it a rich sport. So there's drivers who are part of junior academy in Formula 1, like Red Bull junior team. which me and my sister are fortunate enough to sign up with, and they provide us, the funding to race in F1 Academy, and they gave us the facility to drive to use from the gym to the simulator in Milton Keynes, Red Bull. So yeah, we were fortunate enough for them to, take us under their wing, and literally Red Bull gives you wings, take us
Yeah.
under their wing
Yeah.
and take care of us and, bring us back into racing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all like a funding sport.
Yeah. So let's now go into that. So obviously you've signed for Red Bull. I was waiting for the right time to bring your sister into this. So again, people don't know or won't know that your sister is actually also a racing Formula driver, and she's competing in the same competition, obviously, as you. What's the dynamic there? Right? Like, I mean, how
Yeah.
do you're racing against your younger sister on track, and you're both competitive. I can see she's quite competitive. I mean, I was watching some of the stuff, but she's seriously competitive as well,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do a separate one with her because I've got
Yeah.
to, But what's that like?
I mean, it's different, and I don't know, I would say it's like it's fun and not fun at the same time. It has its pros and cons. Like we enjoy traveling together, doing everything together, experience, the same race weekend together, but at the same time, we argue, we go like we share a container where we have to all like share, me, her, and my teammate, and we're always fighting in there, me and my sister, like clean up your stuff, you're always throwing your shoes here, pick up your suit or something. So they're like these little things where she annoys me in. But then other than that, I mean, on track and off track, I mean, we do help each other. Like I think we're at an advantage where other teammates would consider themselves teammates, but they wouldn't really be teammates on
Yeah,
track. But with me and my sister, we really respect each other
yeah,
on track.
absolutely. And I don't think that has there ever been siblings on the track before. Like, do you know?
I think it was just the Schumacher, like
Yeah,
the yeah, Schumachers,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. But other than that, I think no. I mean, racing in the same championship, no. I think it's just them and my sister and
yeah.
me.
So that's also super cool, right? Because
Yeah.
now, um, and but you're better, right? Or,
I think we're both like she's the more smoother one and I'm the more aggressive one. So
yeah.
like I have more racecraft, and she can set a fastest lap.
No, obviously it's a really interesting dynamic, obviously, with you both on track and racing in the same team, which is super cool, obviously from a Red Bull perspective as well.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that there's going to be some interesting moments as you guys continue, your journey, honing it back into again the topic today, which is like the power and destiny. From a power perspective, one of the things that I always like to understand with people who come on the podcast is what really drives you, though, right? So you've you've had ups, you've had downs, you've had interesting moments, you've put in time, effort into this. You have to fund parts of this yourself. So what drives that? You know,
I mean, I would say like people like trying to tell me that you can't do it, you'll never make it, it's not your sport, why don't you just focus on something else? That's the drive I had, to prove them wrong. That is why really like stayed in motorsport for a very long time, and I tried everything, especially like during the pandemic. It was difficult to get back into racing because I had no funds, no budget that was enough for me to get in the championship. So I had to work by myself. So I started doing advertisements, trying to, make enough money for me to fund myself back into racing. So it's always that self drive that I had, like if I can't find the sponsorship, then I'll figure out a way. There's always a way for me to get back into it. It's good and bad
yeah.
because it just, at the same time, like I remove my focus from my studies and I'm just focusing on this. So it has its ups and downs.
Because focusing on that kind of commercial side must be difficult because it's distracting you from obviously the performance side.
Yeah, exactly. So like I just focus on trying to find, a really good deal, and then like that shifts me from training in the gym, from being, on the simulator, like being more consistent with my like physical aspect and mental aspect of racing. Like I remember I had the opportunity to race in a championship the last 2 rounds, and I was physically not prepared. I was too focused on trying to find the funds that I didn't even train in the gym for
Mm,
6 months.
yeah.
And I go straight into the championship, and I couldn't even drive the car because of how heavy it was. So yeah, I think it's really important to have a balance between both. But the main focus is always, trying to find, time in the gym and focus on simulator and the physical aspects. Because you never know, maybe last minute you have an opportunity and you're already ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the kind of segment where I throw out a few random kind of questions, and you answer kind of back in terms of the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay,
Okay.
so there's a few things, right? So most powerless moment.
Most powerless moment, it was that race weekend where I was not physically prepared.
Yeah, so that's most powerless moment. So
Yeah.
you've stepped in the car and you realize you just
I tried 10 laps and I just couldn't drive the car anymore. And I always go back to the pits and I tell them, I'm done. I'm not driving anymore.
yeah, okay, wow. Greatest fear.
um, my greatest fear is insects. So,
Insects.
yeah. I remember I was in the cockpit one time and a grasshopper jumped in. And I completely removed my belts and I jumped out of the car.
Someone who goes 240 kilometers an hour is scared of insects.
Yeah, I don't like insects,
Greatest comeback.
Greatest comeback would be after a year and a half of no racing, and then I came back into F1 Academy. My first race, I was on the podium and I won my first victory. So I would say F1 Academy first season.
Okay, we'll unpack that in a bit. And the final one, greatest inspiration.
My greatest inspiration is my sister.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, why?
I mean, she basically was the first female in history to claim a podium finish in F4 Italian. So there was many other women before her who were racing and they haven't reached a podium, and my sister was the first in history to do that. So that was a really big and like inspirational moment. I was there to witness it as well, to see her get that podium, so I'm super happy that she made history.
Brilliant. So you've both made history, right?
Yeah, we both did, yeah.
So let's unpack the winning side. So again, there's very few people who've actually, participating in obviously these racing events is one thing. Winning a race or getting on a podium is another
Mhm.
step, but winning is a completely different kind of sphere, right? Last year you won 2 races. I mean, what was that like? Like you're coming down the final lap, you've won this race. Like what that feel like?
I mean, in the beginning, I would just try to pull a gap. And then I always, whenever I lead, I pull like a 3 second gap from the people behind me. And I'm like super excited. I'm like, I'm just going to drive like with one hand now. This is too easy. So, yeah, I mean, in my head, I'm like, in Red Bull Ring, it was the most surreal moment, because I was being underestimated by a lot of people in teams who would actually in the beginning not want me to be with them in the team because they were like, her performance is really bad on track and we don't want her. And then they see me in F1 Academy performing better than their drivers. So it was like that moment where I'm like,
Yeah, that's
like,
it.
yeah.
And you are one of those, you're one of very few people who've actually, and obviously in the F1 Academy, the new format that's come
Hmm.
out is you're a race winner,
Hmm.
and that's incredible because a lot of people again are participating. They might even get to a podium because there's a lot of people I can see as you follow it. There's lots of changes on the podium, and even but there's very few winners, and
Hmm.
so no one can obviously ever take that away from you, which is unreal. Which is your favorite track? Just out of interest.
Red Bull Ring.
Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, that's my
Are you
favorite
saying
track.
that because you have to say that?
No, no, no. I actually love that track
Yeah.
so much. Like, It's the only track where you can push your limits and not like you're not gonna end up like in the gravel or anything. So it's my favorite track. I used to always purple sector the first two sectors in F1 Academy, so it's like my
Yeah.
favorite track.
So we were talking about this off air, and I think I wanted to bring it back in. So a lot of people can't pronounce your name.
Oh yeah.
So which country has destroyed your name so that we can call them out on this podcast?
I'll get canceled.
No.
I would say like most of the commentators are like British. So sometimes the way they pronounce our last name is like a Japanese exquisite dish. A Kubayashi or something, It's like really, I mean, I've never heard that, but that's really unique, Yeah.
So right, so it's the British, right? And I had to practice. I think I was practicing for a while before we came out. I was like, gotta say this right, can't say it wrong. That's why I've only said it once because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
But no, that's brilliant. So we're coming towards the end of kind of this discussion, and I want to kind of dive into the future, right? So we've talked about, destiny has brought you to where you are today. You didn't ever expect to be where you are, but you are. How are you thinking about the future now? Like, it's an unknown for you. You maybe have some ideas, but like, what are you thinking there? And where do you want to be? Where do you want to get? How do you want to get there?
I mean, for sure, like I would love to still be in motorsport. I really don't think of the future because when I was much younger, I would always think, like I'll have an opportunity next year to drive in Formula 3 or something, but then when that time came, I was not racing at all. So I would rather just live in the moment, live in this season, try to do my best and take every race like it's my last. And hopefully we see like what's going to happen in the future, whether I'm still racing or whether I contribute to the racing environment. So for sure, hopefully I'm still involved.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. And if there was, as we kind of come to the end part now, which is there's lots of people who I know for a fact are going to be super inspired by your story and are going to want to understand more about you, because I mean we've only touched upon
Mhm.
so much. There's so much more that I think that we could be speaking to people about, but they're going to want to find out about you, obviously, and so where's the best place for people to find out about your story or follow your journey? Where's that best place?
Oh yeah, Instagram,
Instagram.
Instagram, TikTok
Yeah.
are the two main places where, I'm always posting.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So people can follow you there, which is
Mhm.
which is awesome. And what's some advice for them? So again, inspired young people, seen your journey now, understand what you've been through, what it takes, or a portion of that. Like, what are you advising them? You're still naturally you're quite young still, so a lot of people won't realize. Obviously, you're so mature in the way you're thinking and the way you've developed technically from a sports perspective, everything. But what's that one kind of piece of advice that you want to give to people?
I would say like, live in the moment, don't take everything for granted, enjoy what you do. Don't do something for someone else or to prove someone else wrong or to try to make a point, just do things for your own sake and not for others. Because I used to just still stay in motorsport and overstress myself, overpressure myself just to please everyone else, which has its downfalls, and you're just going to go backwards. You're never going to move forwards. And you know try new things. If racing is not for you, try new things. It's never, it's not the end of the world. Age is not an issue. You can always do anything at whatever age you are. So just enjoy what you do.
Okay, and if you weren't racing, what would you be doing?
Honestly, like either I would be like, in the sports council or something, maybe in the business side, because I'm very business oriented. I always want to do like a plan a business idea. I actually write down all my business ideas and I
Okay.
go up to my dad and I'm like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? I want to start this. I want to start that. And I just, I start a business it doesn't work out, I'm like, okay, I'll make a new one, you
Yeah.
know?
No, but that's really cool. And the entrepreneurial side we haven't actually discussed much, and
Mhm.
so we can absolutely kind of talk about that because, me personally, my journey has obviously been entrepreneurial for the last 15, 20 years, again, different businesses and mapping them out. What got you into the business side? Because, was it a family thing or
Yeah, I think it's like a family thing. Like it runs in our blood because my father's an entrepreneur, his brothers are entrepreneurs. So it's just, you always see them talk about business when you're in the car with them, the phone calls, the meetings, you always listen to it. So I feel like it kind of went in my head, and I'm always business oriented. I always want to start something and I want to learn something through YouTube, TikTok, or whatever. So I always like the thing is, I always have like my dream cars. Whoops,
no?
my
Sorry.
dream cars aligned,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I want to buy this car, and if I'm gonna buy this car, I need to focus on this business, and I need to making money and all of that.
Yeah. And what's the kind of wackiest business idea that you came up with, and you wanted to launch, and then you went to your father and went, "I want to do this," and he was like, "Listen, that's never happening."
I mean, he never really wasn't like discouraging. He would criticize, but he wouldn't discourage. So I had like this idea of renting out branded dresses that I had. And he said it's a really good idea, but it's the wrong market because the UAE, nobody rents anything.
Yeah.
Everybody buys.
Yeah.
So he was right about it because I did it. I was
Yeah.
like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. And I did it and it didn't work out.
Fine. So is there any businesses coming on the horizon that we should be looking out for?
Probably a food truck.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I
Any
have an
type of
idea.
cuisine specifically?
Yeah, I'm trying to like involve Moroccan fusion cuisines. So like go creative and try to infuse so many different cuisines together that's with Moroccan dishes.
It's really interesting because the food truck scene here in the GCC generally is getting so big now,
Yeah.
and um, so like there's just more and more popping up. Even in Saudi and Riyadh, there's just so many streets now that you just drive down and food trucks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, but I am seeing that they're all doing similar things though. They're not.
Yeah.
There's not anything different about them. People are just kind of copying the same idea. So Moroccan fusion, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like what, Moroccan street food or?
Yeah, like small bites, like street food, like from sweet to savory, so a mix of both. Because whenever I go to a food truck, they either have only sweet things, and then you go to another food truck, they only have savory. I want to provide both, everything you have, from drinks to coffees to soft drinks, like everything provided in one go. You don't have to jump from one food truck to another.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just an idea. Hopefully, hopefully I go through with it.
Everything starts as an idea.
Yeah.
Amna, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast, spending time, giving your time up. And instead of maybe coming up with an idea for business, but thanks for really taking the time, sharing your story. I'm sure you've inspired so many people who watch this, and really looking forward to continuing, seeing you succeed in your journey and catching up again and again.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's nice to see you again after 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've actually got together, right?
Yeah.
We've been both very busy in our own stuff, so it's
Mhm.
been really nice to sit down and catch up, but let people actually hear that conversation. So
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this. This is probably my favorite podcast. I'll consider this
someone
my
clip
first.
that quickly.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.